The winter sun dragged itself across the dusty plains like a tired old traveler, casting a pale light that barely touched the frozen ground. Miles from any real town, hidden between broken cliffs and forgotten wagon trails, stood a small, collapsing shack that barely deserved to be called a home. Its boards were split by wind and age. Its roof sagged like it had given up long ago. Inside that shack, a widow named Mara Ellison knelt on the dirt floor, her body thin from hunger and grief, her hands shaking as she divided the last scraps of stale bread on a rusted tin plate. Her two children watched closely. Claire, only 8, tried to be brave, her lips pressed tight as she waited. Lucas, barely 5, clutched the edge of Mara's dress, his eyes too large for his small face. Their hands trembled as Mara broke the bread into pieces so small they hardly looked real. Not just from the cold, but from the kind of hunger that settles deep in the bones and never fully leaves. Mara forced a smile. It was the kind of smile a mother learns when there is nothing left to give but comfort. She whispered for them to eat slowly, telling them it would last longer, even though she knew the truth. The scraps would not last another hour. Her own stomach burned, but she pushed her share toward the children, pretending she was not starving. Outside, the wind howled like a lonely wolf, slipping through every crack in the shack and rattling the loose boards. Somewhere far off, the smell of smoke and horses drifted on the air. In the distance, moving through the canyon with slow, steady purpose, a cowboy rode an old bay horse. His name was Caleb Rowan, and he carried himself like a man who had survived more storms than most. Caleb was not looking for a family. He was not looking for trouble, and he was not chasing redemption. He rode those forgotten lands simply because he believed no place should be too lonely to check on. As he passed near the shack, a faint sound cut through the wind, a child's cough. Then the quiet voice of a mother trying to hide despair. Caleb slowed. He dismounted, his boots crunching softly on frozen dirt, and stepped toward the shack. When he pushed open the broken door, what he saw struck him harder than any fight or loss he had ever known. A woman kneeling on the floor, offering her own food to her children. 2 small faces, scared, and far older than they should have been. A plate, holding almost nothing. Caleb had seen wounded soldiers and starving towns, but this quiet suffering broke something open in his chest. He tried to speak, but no words came. Instead, he stepped inside, gently lifted the plate, and stared at the crumbs resting on cold metal. "This all you've had today?" he asked softly. Mara straightened as much as her weak legs allowed. "We're managing," she said, though the lie trembled in her voice. Caleb looked at her the way a man looks when his heart is breaking and rebuilding at the same time. He breathed in, then out, steadying himself. Then he turned toward the door, as if a decision had already been made. "Pack your things," he said, his voice deep and steady. "We're going home." Mara blinked, confused and frightened. "Sir, what are you saying?" Quote. Caleb stepped closer, his eyes fierce but kind. "I'm saying you don't deserve this life. Not you, not them." The shack felt different then, as if hope itself had stepped inside. Claire glanced up at her mother. Lucas gripped Mara's dress tighter, fear and longing mixing in his eyes. And for the first time in months, Mara broke. Tears slid down her cheeks in silence, melting something frozen inside her. "Why would you help strangers?" she asked. Caleb knelt beside her. "Because I've lived hungry. I've lived alone, and because no one should suffer when someone else can help." Slowly, unsure if this was real, Mara took his hand. The children gathered their few belongings, a torn blanket, a small wooden toy, and one faded photograph. Caleb helped them onto his horse, wrapping them in his coat, and together they turned away from the shack. As they left, the broken little home faded into dust behind them. Ahead stretched the open plains, wide and uncertain, and for the first time in a long while, hope breathed again. Morning came slowly over Rowan Ranch, the kind of quiet morning that felt careful, as if the land itself did not want to scare anyone awake. Pale light slipped through the windows and touched the wooden floors, the table, the walls that had known too much silence before. Mara woke before the children, her body stiff from years of sleeping on cold ground, her mind racing with fear that the warmth around her might disappear if she moved too fast. She lay still for a moment, listening. No wind screaming through cracks, no boards rattling. Just the low sound of cattle in the distance, and the soft breathing of Claire and Lucas beside her. She sat up slowly, pressing a hand to her chest. The room smelled like clean wood and fire ash, not dust and hunger. For a moment she wondered if this was a dream born from desperation. Then she saw the thick blankets pulled over the children and felt the solid bed beneath her, and she knew it was real. Tears filled her eyes again, but these were quiet tears, the kind that come when fear loosens its grip. In the kitchen, Mrs. Harper was already moving, her heavy steps confident and warm. A pot simmered on the stove, filling the house with the smell of broth and bread. When Mara stepped into the doorway, Mrs. Harper turned and smiled wide, the kind of smile that made no room for doubt. "Sit," she said, pointing to a chair. "You look like the wind might carry you off." Mara tried to protest, but her voice failed her. She sat. When the bowl was placed in front of her, steam rising, her hands shook so badly she had to steady them against the table. The first sip burned her tongue, and she welcomed it. Food with weight. Food that would stay. Claire and Lucas wandered in soon after, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Lucas froze when he saw the bowl, his small body unsure if he was allowed to hope. Mrs. Harper crouched down and looked him right in the eye. "You eat as much as you want," she said. "There's more." Lucas looked at Mara for permission. When she nodded, he rushed forward, climbing into his chair. Claire followed more slowly, still cautious, but when she tasted the bread, her shoulders dropped. Caleb stood in the doorway watching, his hat in his hands. He did not speak, he did not need to. The days that followed unfolded gently, like a careful promise. Caleb gave them space, letting the ranch speak for itself. He showed Mara where the wash water was drawn, where the pantry stood, full but not wasteful. He gave the children simple tasks, things that made them feel useful without burden. Claire learned to brush the horses, her small hands moving slowly, her face brightening when the animals leaned into her touch. Lucas followed Caleb everywhere, asking endless questions, his laughter starting to return in short bursts. At night, when the children slept, Mara sat alone with her thoughts. Fear crept in then, fear of being sent away, fear of owing too much, fear of trusting something that could break. She replayed Caleb's words again and again, wondering how long kindness like his could last. One evening she found him fixing a fence near the edge of the property. The sky was wide and orange, the sun sinking low. She stood there unsure, then finally spoke. "I don't want to be a burden," she said quietly. Caleb kept working, his hands steady. "You're not." "You don't know how little I have to give," she said. He stopped then and looked at her. "I know exactly how little you think you have," he said, "and I know how wrong that is." She did not answer. She could not. The words settled deep. Not everyone welcomed the change. A few days later, a neighbor rode up, his eyes sharp and his mouth thin. He looked at the children, at Mara, then at Caleb. "Didn't know you were running a shelter now," the man said. Caleb stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Didn't know I needed permission." The man scoffed. "Folks will talk." "Let them," Caleb replied. The rider left, dust rising behind him. Mara watched, fear stirring again. That night, she barely slept. She expected Caleb to change his mind. He did not. Instead, trouble came another way. One afternoon, as Mara and the children worked near the barn, two men appeared at the fence line. Their clothes were rough, their eyes cold. Mara felt it before they spoke. The past had found her. "You," one of them said, pointing, "thought you could disappear." Mara's knees weakened. Claire moved closer, sensing danger. Lucas hid behind her skirt. Caleb was there in seconds. He did not raise his voice. He did not draw his gun. He simply stood between them. "She's not going anywhere," he said. The men laughed. "She owes," one replied. Caleb's eyes hardened. "Not to you." The standoff lasted only moments, but it felt endless. Finally, the men backed away, threats hanging in the air. When they were gone, Mara collapsed against the fence, shaking. Caleb knelt beside her. "They won't come back," he said. "How can you be sure?" she whispered. "Because I'll make sure," he answered. That night, Mara told him everything. The debt her husband left, the threats, the fear that chased her across the plains. Caleb listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. When she finished, she waited for judgment. Instead, he said, "You're safe here." Weeks passed. The land shifted toward spring. Green began to push through brown. Claire laughed more easily. Lucas slept through the night. Mara found herself humming while she worked, the sound surprising her. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Caleb and Mara sat on the porch. The children played nearby, their voices soft and happy. "I don't know what the future looks like," Mara said. Caleb nodded. "Neither do I. But for the first time," she continued, "I'm not afraid to see it." Caleb looked at her then, really looked. The silence between them was heavy, but not painful. It was full. Far off, thunder rolled, low and distant. A storm was coming, and neither of them knew that it would test everything they had begun to build. The storm arrived before dawn, heavy and sudden, sweeping across the plains with a force that shook the ranch awake. Rain slammed against the roof, and thunder rolled so deep it felt like it came from the ground itself. Caleb was already up, pulling on his coat, his mind sharp and alert. Storms did not scare him. What followed storms sometimes did. Mara woke to the sound and sat up fast, her heart racing. Years of fear rose in her chest like a reflex. She checked the children first. Claire and Lucas slept close together, their faces peaceful. She wrapped a blanket tighter around them and stepped into the hallway. Caleb met her there, lantern in hand. "Stay inside," he said gently. "I'll check the fences and the creek." She nodded, but worry clung to her. As he stepped out into the rain, she stood in the doorway longer than she should have, watching his shape fade into the dark. The creek rose quickly. By mid-morning, water rushed hard and loud, swallowing the lower fields. Caleb worked fast, moving cattle to higher ground, fixing what he could. When he returned, soaked and tired, he found Mara waiting with hot coffee and steady hands. They did not speak much. They did not need to. By afternoon, the storm eased, leaving behind a heavy quiet. That was when trouble returned. Hoofbeats cut through the still air. Mara heard them first. Her body went cold. 2 riders appeared at the edge of the property, the same men. This time they did not stop at the fence. Caleb stepped forward, his posture calm, his voice steady. "You were told to stay away." Quote, "One man smiled thinly. Weather washed out our trail. Thought we'd check in." Mara stood behind Caleb, the children inside, watching through the window. Fear burned in her throat, but she did not run. "You leave now," Caleb said. The other man's eyes flicked toward the house. "Debt don't disappear." Caleb's hand rested near his side, not threatening, just ready. Neither do consequences. The tension snapped when a third sound joined them. Another horse, then another. Neighbors, riders who had seen the storm and come to help. Men and women who knew Caleb Rowan and trusted him. The 2 strangers looked around and understood. They backed away, curses trailing behind them, and rode off into the distance. This time they did not look back. Mara's legs nearly gave out. Caleb turned to her, his face softening. "It's over," he said. She nodded. Tears spilling, relief breaking through fear at last. He did not touch her then. He simply stood close, letting her breathe. Days passed. Repairs were made. Life settled again. But something had shifted. The danger had tested them, and they had stood together. The ranch felt stronger for it. One evening, as the sky burned red and gold, Caleb found Mara at the fence line. The children chased fireflies nearby, laughter floating on the air. "I need to tell you something," he said. She turned, listening. "I never planned for this," he continued. "I built this place to survive, not to belong. Then you came." Her breath caught. "I don't want you here out of need," he said. "I want you here because you choose it. Because you want a future here." Mara's eyes filled, but her voice was steady. "I choose this," she said. "I choose safety. I choose kindness. I choose us." He nodded, emotion tight in his throat. Slowly, carefully, he reached for her hand. This time, she did not hesitate. The seasons turned fully. Spring bloomed across the land. Claire rode confidently now, her laughter bright. Lucas grew stronger, his cheeks full. The ranch echoed with life. One morning, Mara stood at the window watching the children play. Caleb came up behind her, quiet as always. "You did more than save us," she said softly. "You gave us a home." Caleb shook his head. "You made it one." They stood there together, watching the future unfold in small, ordinary moments, the kind that once felt impossible. As the sun rose higher, casting warm light across the plains, the ranch stood firm and alive, no longer just land and wood, but a place of healing, a place where broken lives had been gathered and made whole. And far from the collapsing shack swallowed by dust, a widow, her children, and a cowboy who never meant to be a hero found what they had all been missing. They found home. Summer settled gently over Rowan Ranch, wrapping the land in warm light and long, quiet evenings. The hard edges of the past felt further away now, like a bad dream that faded with daylight. Mara stood on the porch one morning, watching Claire and Lucas run across the yard, their laughter ringing clear and free. There was strength in their voices now, no fear, no hunger hiding behind their smiles. Claire had grown taller, her confidence steady as she helped Mrs. Harper in the kitchen and rode her pony without holding her breath. Lucas followed Caleb everywhere, his small hand often tucked into Caleb's coat pocket as if it had always belonged there. Caleb never pulled away. He never needed to. Mara saw it clearly then. This was no longer borrowed safety. This was life rebuilding itself, piece by piece. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Mara found Caleb sitting alone near the fence, staring out at the land. The sky was painted in deep orange and soft purple, the kind of sunset that made everything feel possible. "You're quiet," she said, stepping beside him. "I was thinking," he replied, "about how close I came to riding past that shack." Her chest tightened. "And what stopped you?" He looked at her, honest and calm. "The sound of a child coughing, and the thought that if I didn't stop, I'd carry that with me forever." Mara reached for his hand, holding it with certainty now, not fear. "You changed our lives," she said. Caleb shook his head slowly. "No," he answered, "we changed each other's." Quote, "The wind moved softly through the grass, carrying the smell of earth and growing things. In that quiet moment, the future felt solid, not frightening." Weeks later, under a clear blue sky, the ranch gathered. Neighbors stood nearby, respectful and warm. Mrs. Harper dabbed her eyes with her apron. Claire stood tall, holding Lucas's hand, both dressed in clean clothes that no longer hung loose on their bodies. Mara stood beside Caleb, her heart steady. There was no rush, no grand promises, just two people choosing each other with open eyes. When Caleb took her hand, it felt natural, like something that had always been meant to happen. Not because he saved her, not because she needed him, but because together they were stronger than they had ever been alone. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the land, Caleb looked at the children, then at Mara. "This is home," he said simply. Mara smiled, tears shining but not falling. "Yes," she replied, "it finally is." Quote, And as the ranch settled into evening, lanterns glowing softly against the dark, the plains held their secret close. In a world that had taken so much, 4 broken souls had found refuge, family, and a future that felt wide and endless, just like the western sky.